Brownstone? Great, thank you. Okay, so we're here to talk about astrology and what's happening this year and into next year. And let's go. Okay, first we have, this is the chart for the Aries Ingress, which astrologers look at to see what's happening in our country, in the world. The first day of spring, March 20th, we draw the chart. And so therefore in the U.S., let me get my pointer. In the U.S. chart, we have Jupiter-Pluto in opposition right on this axis. And this is the axis representing us and them. So Jupiter expands everything that it touches and makes it magnify. And Pluto is about power. So right now we have out of proportion power struggles going on, both in the country where we have too much government controls and around the world with other countries that we're dealing with. There's an imbalance of power is the first thing. Okay, so let's see if I can go to the next slide without, okay. Here we go. So I've been talking for a while here at the Expo, and been talking a lot about the Uranus-Pluto squares. And this chart is showing the grand cross that we were in with just the 4 planets that are in the cross. I've left everything else off so you can really see it. And this chart really shows the impact we've been at with other countries in the world. We've got stuff going on in Russia. We've got the sanctions that the U.S. put on Putin. And so this was happening in the 3rd week of April when everything aligned and you had a lot of threats going this and that way. You heard me talking on the panel about the Mars retrograde in Libra, which has to do with relationships. And it has to do with really not taking action but knowing that you have to be diplomatic. That's the sign Libra. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And here are the dates of the Uranus-Pluto squares. The last one we just had was here, April 26th, in that Grand Cross of that. But these really have to do with with 2 incongruent energies, battling out for the same purpose. And the conjunction of Uranus and Pluto took place in the 60s, and there were that was the assassination of Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy, and there were riots over Vietnam. So this was when people were beginning to recognize what was going on and the imbalance of power in government and starting to act out. There were riots, and as we've seen during these periods, we had the Arab Spring, we had a lot of uprisings in other countries and changes in leadership. And just to point out some of the places where we've been seeing the degree of the cardinal cross was playing out at 13 degrees. So here we have China with their Mercury, and this is the financial, other alliances, financial alliances, this 8th house here, and so it was hitting their Mercury. And we have also Putin's chart. These are all the key players, so 13 degrees. So if you have 13 degrees, cardinal in your chart, which means Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn. So if you know your chart, and you can look at it and you see that 13th degree, you know that you were really being hit with this Grand Cross. So it may have been within your own life situations where you felt really stuck, you couldn't move out of it. So Mars is direct now, so we're starting to move forward. So things are easing up a little bit. So this chart in the center wheel is the first president of the U.S., the POTUS chart, 1789. And so we look at that chart just to see what's happening with our elected presidents. And we see right here Saturn is at the base of the chart. Saturn is a structure, so we see it's all the way at the bottom, so it's kind of a low point in terms of how our leadership is considered in the world right now. The base of the chart is considered the end of the matter, so there's some kind of ending happening in terms of leadership here. Now I mentioned in the panel about these eclipses, these 4 eclipses that are lined up. You can see the dates. We just had one at 25 Libra. Again, I'm just going to point out that if you have this degree cardinal in your chart, more Libra, Aries for an eclipse, that would have been affecting you. And these are the other 3 eclipse dates and degrees. Now, eclipses are when the planets line up, the full moon eclipses, the sun opposite the moon, these are times when there's a critical culmination of events. There's very heightened energies, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of emotions. Does anyone remember what was happening in April? It was kind of stressful, highly emotional, public, the moon was to the public. And remember mid-April we had the flight MH370 disappeared and it was everywhere. All the talk was highly emotional about that flight that disappeared. So that's, similar things in your own life that are very heightened emotionally happen on full moons and eclipses. So previously, the tetra eclipses, you have to go all the way back to, let's see, 1949, 1950, following Israel's statehood, and the year in 67, 68 was when Jerusalem was liberated in the Six-Day War. And before that, you have to go all the way back to when Columbus discovered America to be around the same time as the 4 eclipses. So we have these 4 eclipses that's going to symbolize something new, something never happened before. These all fall on Jewish holy days. That's another symbolism, and they say that the U.S. has always been a safe haven for the Jewish people. So let's see what these signify for us. Full moon eclipse is an omen of something to come. It can be an amazing discovery, something that we've never before known. We heard Thunder talking in the panel about the hologram stuff, and we also saw on the Billboard Awards, they did a hologram of Michael Jackson. So we have a lot of other technological things that we've seen coming out. A lot of them that they're already in the works that are now that we're finding out about. So it could have to do with travel to Mars or the moon, which there's been talk about that a lot lately. But personal, political, economic, dramatic changes, things will appear on those dates. So I've done a talk before on thinking outside the box, so I want to kind of go through a little bit of that because some of the transits coming up really are going to force us to do that. So the definition of common sense, the great Albert Einstein said that what we believe to be common sense is actually nothing more than the collection of prejudices collected by the time we're 18. So we think that's common sense, but everyone's common sense is really different depending on your parents, or people wouldn't do crazy things because they think they're normal. And the normalcy bias is how people generally feel when they're in a mental state where they think nothing really bad can happen to them. It's kind of a bias because things do happen. So it causes people to underestimate the possibility of a disaster both occurring and also its possible effects. So you place a frog in a pot of boiling water and it will jump out, of course. But if you place a frog in tepid water, slowly raising the heat, that will make it out. It fears no danger because it feels the temperature slowly increasing, but as long as most of the other frogs are happy swimming around, if you think of it in terms of people, as long as we're just kind of happy thinking nothing's wrong, they will just continue to do the same thing. They think they have to just keep the status quo. So if we think of our politicians and CEOs and corporations, oh, everything's fine, these Monsanto seeds are great. Don't listen to those, reports and those pictures of those mice on the internet with the cancer tumors. Everybody just eat it. Okay, so people are like violins. There's a story of if you have 3 people in a room and they're each tuning up their violin and they're all on the same note, and you bring a 4th violin into the room and you just place it on the table, no one's even playing it, it will begin to resonate to the same note as the other 3 violins. And that's sort of how we are as people. If you're in a group of people, we tend to pick up on their energy and be as they are, which is one of the reasons why I was saying it's important to be around people that aren't negative, to eliminate them. So it's one thing to be realistic and not have the see bias, but it's another to be around negative people. So I love this photo. It's sheep. What you do depends on who you are. Not one of the terms used for people who do follow the herd and don't think outside the box are sheeple. Some of you have probably heard of that. Another planetary occurrence we're having right now is Neptune is in Pisces. And Pisces is a sign of film, illusion, fantasy. The film, did anyone see Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit? Russian espionage and chasing. They had, within the movie, the Russians were undermining our stock market by electronically triggering these trades, and they had, you know, the expert IT guy sneaking in and disengaging the whole system. So we have a parallel with the current events with the Russian alliance with China now, and they're trying to no longer trade in the petrodollar. So a lot of times things are put into the movies that are symbolic of what's really happening in the world. So I always look out for that. So other things that can correlate with Neptune and Pisces also has to do with religion as well as illusion, deception. So it could be a new religion. There's been breaking down of current or undermining of current religions. Both popes announced the ET presence. Did anyone see that online? I mentioned the holographic technology, and it all sounds crazy, but it's all been in the news. Okay, here's a great photo on how to save yourselves. Does anyone remember how this guy saved himself? I showed this once before. No? So nobody remembers that this actually is a Photoshop photo of two different photos. We got the guy in the kayak photoshopped in with a shark. So this is an example of the media and the illusion and the Neptune and the films and how we all can get sort of lulled into believing what we see. So while I want you to believe the alignments, that was a Photoshop. Okay, did anyone see Argo?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the main lines is, if you want to sell a lie, get the press to sell it for you. So, and that occurred in that movie, how they were able to carry out the rescue operation. And here's some spin, how the news works. Here's a picture of Obama enjoying a Pepsi. So we have NPR, Obama enjoys a Pepsi. CNN, Obama appeals to Pepsi fans. So they're putting the spin on it. Fox News, Obama declares war on Coke. The Onion, which is a spoof forest site. Obama declares war on Coke. Just making the point that Fox News and The Onion aren't too far off from each other. Okay, so here we have some other ways in which the media has sort of lulled us into this normalcy bias. It's kind of the theme of this section of the talk. Is they have this name game where magically they wave a wand and they call it the QE1, the QE2, the QE3, and that's going to fix this economic crisis that we're having. And there's Chairman Bernanke with a wand and a magician's hat. So were we under the spell of the normalcy bias? I would say some people were. Some people kind of knew that these were names. So the QE, anyone remember these, the QEs? You've heard about them in the news. The Queen Elizabeth, where we gave our money to England. So, in late 2008, the Fed bought $500 billion in mortgage-backed securities to solve the housing crisis. So they cut interest rates to near 0%. Did this work? No, because they needed QE2. Then we did QE2. That was for about 7 months, and the Fed bought $600 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds, and they instigated Operation Twist, another name game where you could trade with long-term treasuries for shorter term. So that was supposed to spur the economy. So it did not create jobs, did not create money for people. It was just shifting around the bonds. Then QE3 or QE Infinity, since September of 2012, I think they're tapering it a little bit now with Janet Yellen in. So that's when they decided that the Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private bank that just prints money with nothing backing it, will purchase $40 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities from other banks every month with no end. And they'll keep interest rates at 0% until 2015. So basically, they bought out all the mortgages. The dollar became devalued because it's endless money printing. The dollar will eventually have to collapse because it's not worth anything. And everything goes up in price, but it's not like there's going to be a food shortage, is what I want to say, even though I like to sell organic seeds at these expos so that people get the idea that you can grow your own food, you'll never be without. the prices will go up, and they have gone up dramatically. I think last time I had the same bag of sugar that was maybe $2.49. It had gone up a whole $1, and it was like an ounce or two less within, you know, of a span of about a year and a half. Okay, so here's some little injustice facts. There are 1,500 newspapers, 1,100 magazines, 9,000 radio stations, 1,500 TV stations, 2,400 publishers owned by only 3 corporations. So what point of view are we getting? Are we getting something that they want us to think, the corporations? So they can really control the dialogue and how we see things. So the next World War III is actually, they didn't get it started in Syria. Nothing took off with a world war, at least yet, over in Russia, Ukraine area with us. The alliance has been formed right now with China and Russia. Dollar is losing its status because they're closing trades outside of the world reserve currency, which was always the dollar. And the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, Indonesia, China, they are forming their own bank that was supposed to start in July, but if you saw any photos or video of the IMF meeting, all the countries were there. So they're all in on whatever is going on. So when you see that, it's hard to really think, if they're all sitting negotiating, why would we ever go to war? I mean, isn't that what these negotiations and these, you know, alphabet, IMF, are supposed to be negotiating for us. So this was an interview that I had gotten off of CNBC actually a couple years ago. I just have a very short 10-second clip on it. This was Lloyd Blankfein, and actually how I'm speaking is Alan Simpson, who was a senator from Wyoming, who's also co-chair of the Obama's Committee on Financial Reform. So, and let's see what he said a couple years ago regarding this.
They really believe, honestly, that no Congress could be this stupid. And by God, they can.
Okay, so he's been a congressman, a senator, so he knows that that's what he's saying, that they printed all this money and bought all these billions of mortgages, and now they basically federalized all the property. They took over all the mortgages. Now they own all the land. But did it solve anything for the people? Are the jobs up? And actually what they're doing now is they don't include people who have lost faith and are still, have stopped looking for work. They've gone out of the workforce, so the unemployment numbers are not even reflective of the actual unemployment. And here's, I love this Mark Twain quote, "It's a lot easier to fool people than to convince people they have been fooled." So I think that's an ego thing. It's really hard to say, God, I really believe that. Okay, so back to the normalcy bias. That can't happen here attitude is both dangerous to yourself and those around you. So we have another alignment coming up later in 2015 that I'm talking about now, so it will be less disorienting. Now, people at the Expo are smart. We are open to new things and aware of other things. Waking up our family and friends is another thing, but so for anyone who hasn't been here in a while or is new, I'll explain what this is about. So Saturn is our sense of reality and structure. Wherever Saturn is going through whatever sector of your chart or planets it's hitting, it's teaching you about that area of your life, and maybe you're initially having the experience where something breaks down or isn't going well or you fail. That's in order for you to learn how to pull yourself up from your roots and put things together. So that's our sense of reality and structure, working for things and manifesting them. Neptune, like I was saying about with film and fantasy, it's that illusory thing, and it's also how we imagine things are, that area of our life where we kind of, things work for us because we believe so strongly a certain way that we manifest that through that belief system. But when the two planets are squaring each other, it's like an electrical wire that you bend and you make it at an angle, and electricity will flow one way and then it'll flow the other way. It'll be disjointed because they don't work together. So the square is the two incompatible energies that don't blend. One will challenge the other one, undermine its function, and take over at different times, so it's kind of disjointed back and forth. So with these two planets, the kinds of things we can expect, and that's why talking about it now because these are things that will be happening out in the world, economically, worldwide, things that we'll be seeing that we may not understand since we're not behind the scenes knowing how all the strings are being pulled and what the purpose is. It can cause disorientation, scattering of focus, imbalance, depression, withdrawal. So knowing about this in advance, you can kind of keep an eye out for what's going on and be prepared. Just get yourself in a position where you're more secure and you're not as likely to overreact to things that are going on.
How long is that event going to last?
The Saturn Square, it's going to be from late 2015 through 2017, I believe. It's a long time. It's back and forth, and it's in the mutable signs of Sagittarius and Pisces, and those are generally signs of adjustment anyway, where we have to be flexible and be able to adapt to things. But then we're adapted to things that we just may not completely understand. I just find it hard to understand how they just wrote a protection law for Monsanto can never be sued. You know, when you go deeper down the rabbit hole and you start to understand that the elite, people with money, the financial bankers, the corporations, the people at the top of the pyramid think differently than the rest of us. I consider the rest of us not the people that are the billionaires. They feel this is a big playground for them all to play in, and we're just using up, their food. So, like I said about the Uranus-Pluto squares, we see how far we've come since the 60s in our protests and our, lashing out against those. I see the key events is the Martin Luther King murder and JFK. I see those events as they're setting up so that they can completely control everybody. And how far have we come in our protests, in our coming together? And one of the things that's great about the Expo is we get to realign ourselves with that positive energy and that insight. And as easy as it is to get cynical, and I do talk about things that are somewhat controversial, keeping that energy positive, that we can make change, that we can band together, that we can influence our electeds, and that's at the grassroots level is where we really have to do it, because that's just what they did, and there are so many more of us than them. So I think they're going to see, and they are seeing, that we're not just going to sit back and take this. So we have the two opposite sides of the normalcy bias. We have the two different sides. So how do you know whether you're avoiding the truth or whether you're just being, sitting back, being lazy or being hopeful? You have to do your research. You have to question those, Albert Einstein, that practicality that you thought was normal for you, and question whether it's really real, and just continue to do your research and try to not just get your research from the three corporations that own everything, which is all of the media. So anything alternative, basically, you're going to get another point of view. And then just by listening and reading, I often read the comments. When I was first learning about some of the things that were going on that I wasn't aware of, it wasn't on CNN, I would read a lot of the comments at the bottom, and people would put links, and you just keep following, and eventually your truth meter comes on, and you know when somebody's telling the truth, or someone's biased, or someone's trolling on the remarks. So there are two different ways that people can interpret a crisis or a challenge. You can either go into fear and inaction, or you can see it as an opportunity to do something. And it can be something just as small as doing some research or making a list of how you might handle it if there were an economic collapse, or if they did say, we all have to eat Monsanto food. In your personal chart, getting back to ourselves, what you can do is you can find the key trigger points. I mean, obviously the best thing to do is to get an actual consultation. But you can look at, if you have your chart, you can look at the degrees, and you can look and see if your chart is being hit by one of those degrees, either by a station of a planet, by one of the eclipse degrees that I talked about. If you have planets in Sagittarius or Pisces, when that's going to get hit by the Saturn-Neptune square, that may be a point where you're going to be affected. So these particular degrees, 13 cardinal, 15 Aries. Cardinal means Aries, Cancer, Libra. Those cardinal signs are being hit right now. 15 Aries, 0 Scorpio. 29 Pisces, it's very late 29 Pisces, this eclipse. It's very close to the Aries axis, 0 Aries, so it's going to be really felt in the world, and 14 and 15 Libra. Also right now, Saturn is in Scorpio. So the Scorpios, or people with planets in Scorpio, or wherever Scorpio is in your chart, is getting restructured. You're having to really review and take a good, hard look at how you're handling things. And here's a little bit more on the financial world. Here's a chart from fxstreet.com of the dollar's collapse. And here's Department of the Treasury showing the debt exploding. Okay, and here we have the currency in circulation versus the value. So the more money that's printed, it's obviously less value. That's pretty easy to see. And here's a scary parallel with the market graph of 1929 and 2014, how it really started to sync up. It's showing here that the pattern was synced up here at the end of 2013. And this is where it went. So this just tells you not to get fear and inaction, to say, okay, I might need to take stock of some things. I'm going to have a few other pieces of information to give some insights as to what's going on. Here's the dollar chart on the inside, first dollar coin. And here I talk about Saturn a lot because Saturn has to do with structure and where the focus is. And here is considered the end of the cycle. You see the numbers of the houses, if you're not familiar with astrology. This is the last house, 12. And Saturn's at the very end of the cycle. This is in November of this year. So I'll talk about the dollar. Let's do questions at the end, okay? So try and remember what you're going to ask, okay? So here's some insight as to closed banks. These 417 between 2007 and 2011. Another 51 closed in 2012. And between 2013 and 2014, another 31 banks have closed. A lot of them have merged. Does everyone remember hearing about the banks crafting living wills? Why do you need a living will? Because you have to plan for how, when something is going to be dying, collapsing, going into a state where it can't function as well. The banks had to have plans to show how they were going to close the bank safely. It was also supposed to stop too big to fail bank bailouts and possibly result in smaller banks. So, who are unsecured lenders? We are. If you have money in a savings account written, and there were vice presidents and presidents of banks, well, maybe not the president, the vice president, someone went in and asked their vice president about this, and they didn't even know when it was put into effect. Your deposit is considered an investment now. So if you have a stock and that company is going under, you just lose your money. So if the bank needs the money to stop it from going under, if you're getting any interest on the account, if you have a zero checking, no fee, no interest, that's not this, but anything else, it's not considered money. It's considered an investment in the bank now, okay? So if the bank has to pay debt, they'll take it from your account before they will go under. So money used to be representative of something. It used to be tied to being backed with gold, and Nixon took us off that in, what, 73? Okay. So money used to represent things, okay? We've got wheat, oil, gold, silver, diamonds. Here's a quote from Thomas Jefferson. Paper is poverty. It's a ghost of money and not money itself. I used to have I forgot it today, a roll of toilet paper that was all dollars, Federal Reserve notes, and I just pulled it off. I'll bring it next time. So I went to Metals and Mineral Expo at the Marriott a couple weeks ago, and they had some fantastic speakers. They had Sprott Asset Management. Ron Paul was a speaker. Sinclair was the gold bull of Wall Street, was a big speaker there. And these are some of the facts I came away with. Gold demand is up 3,367%. They're not putting this on the news. Okay, gold high buyer in 2013, Russia, 47%. The other countries were like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, those kinds of places were bought gold. China has 26% of global private sector demand. The energy deal now with Russia Okay, we got 10 minutes. Okay. Could be the end of the petrodollar. China and Russia are $200 billion in bilateral trade by 2020. What does this say about the new powers that are coming up? China bought the LME in July 2012. In addition to setting the price of metals, they also own the rare earth metals. India, high-end gold, having bought 1,200 tons in 2013, according to the World Gold Council. So money becomes important if you need it for survival, and if you have a plan, what you want. We're all spiritual people, so obviously money isn't our goal. We're not bankers and etc. So we have to get our practical and spiritual selves in order for these transits that are coming up. And this chart is the Barbeau Index. Andre Barbeau is a French who looked at the relationships of the planets and whether they were coming together or expanding, and correlated it with whether the economies of the world and creativity and technology was expanding or whether we were falling into difficult times, wars, depressions, etc. So when we look at this chart for the Aries ingress on March 20th every year, and we see that we were at the high, so a key point in this chart, because by 2015, we're still sort of stagnating. I read it that we're stagnating because the planets are kind of ebbing and flowing. They're not ready to start coming together. And where this chart ends up, obviously, as you can see in 2020, it correlates with the World Depression, okay? I don't like to give this news. This doesn't help anyone to, it doesn't make me happy to be right about this, and I don't want to be right. But nevertheless, this, when we look at this of the Great Depression and World Wars, it was always at a peak or at a base, and now all the writings on the wall. So we have a couple of years, I would say, of time before it really starts to move down. What I felt the December 21st, 2012, that Mayan date showed was this yod here, this called the finger of God, was pointing towards Jupiter, and this is the house of food. So we see that happening now. We see farmers in India just killing themselves because they can't keep up with the Monsanto and the crops and the bees. So here's Jupiter retrograde. So this is where we need to get in order. So support the organizations and your organic and local farmers, get involved. Okay, so this is one of the things that I think is the end game, is we have this Federal Reserve Bank that owns the homes of everyone with mortgages. They have everything over leveraged. They've taken these mortgages and then packaged them and put them as derivatives on the market. They've rented out the homes that are mortgaged, and then they put those. So everything is completely over leveraged. The value of the dollar is diluted. Things are inflating. QE can go on forever, and they want to institute its world currency and implement SDRs, which are special drawing rights, which is it's sort of like a currency, but it's representing a basket of currencies or a basket of commodities like gold, silver, oil. So time is accelerating. So my thinking is get your head in order, get yourself centered, keep your knowledge up, and store your water. Learn where there's a website where you could find out where all the natural springs are in your area. What is the website? Let me look it up. I'll see if I have it. And I actually, it may be in my packet. These are packs that I prepared in 2012 when I started into what was going on. And this has all the lists that you might want to look up and just think of what things will be hard to get in a case of an economic distress situation. Just lists of the things that you would need: garlic, laundry detergent, peroxide, just things that you wouldn't normally say, oh my God, I totally need matches now, candles. They had all these movies, Revolution and things about blackouts, and they keep talking about, you know, Israel wants to hit our grid. And we hear all these rumors, and they're in the movies, and then we see them playing out in our lives. So anyway, this is just a deal that stores in the city, growing silver. I give websites in there. So I have these on CDs. So I have copies of that, and then this year I made up an addendum so that I have CDs that have both on them. And I have those. I also have DVDs of The Secret of Oz, which The Wizard of Oz was really written about the financial industry, the Fall Below the Crow with the yellow bricks of gold, The ruby slippers were originally supposed to be silver slippers to represent the silver money. So it goes through the movie, all the top economists, and explains all the symbolism they put in the movies, because there are actually committees from the government that do go in and insert all these things into the movies. And it's the education system, you know, Common Core, all the stuff that they want people to learn so that we'll be good citizens and be easier to control. So these are things that I have. If anyone would like questions, let's say yes.
Yes.
Hi.
I was fascinated with your November 2014. Was that the death of the dollar? So a chart on the birth of the first coin. And what was the date you had for the birth of? I think it was 17.
Yeah, let me go back and I'll find it when we're done.
But
And
is
I'll
that-
find that slide. Yeah, it was the first coin.
So you're saying November 2014 is
That's
the total
showing
death
really,
of the dollar?
really, it's at the end of the cycle. It has to be restructured. It has to either be restructured, just like in our lives. It doesn't mean die. It means that at the end of a certain period of time, it has to be restructured. It can be the complete ending of it, or it can be reevaluated, redenominated. I mean, I did hear they were going to have a foreign trade dollar and a domestic dollar. That they were going to do that so that there are going to be different values. One would be for foreign trade because the other countries, it's so diluted, they don't want it. They're not accepting dollars in some of the countries. They're closing trades in the renminbi. The Bank of Frankfurt is issuing renminbi denominated bonds to get out of the dollar bonds. So these are things that are happening. Yes.
What about the global warming? Because that's a big, that is something like throwing a wrench into the whole picture.
Yeah.
You know, saying like, doesn't that make you speed things up because
Well, they're first of all,
damage to the earth?
yeah, of course. I mean, the actual climate scientists say there isn't global warming. That there's no change, and that the ice extent is so hard that the bears can't even drill through to get their food. It's killing them. It's so cold. And we had a really cold winter. I have a lot of information in the addenda and a lot of links about the global warming. It remains to be seen. There's an astrometeorologist that I know who's talked about going into global cooling in the winter of 2017. So I have a lot of links and a lot of stuff on the global warming. They're chemtrailing and putting the aluminum in the sky because they think it's going to reflect the heat back up, but actually the heat isn't determining, it's not going to determine whether it goes that way or this way. It can keep it in and reflect it in, so it keeps hitting the aluminum that they're coating us with and creating global warming. Because doesn't that create more money with the carbon?
Gold. I believe gold is what they're supposed to be spraying that would actually be effective.
Right, but are they spraying gold?
No, but not spraying gold. Reporting it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
A lot of people have been talking about 2012 and the age of Aquarius.
Right.
What's that going to happen? What's that all about?
I think it's about people waking up. Aquarius is a sign of brotherhood of humanity. People coming together, exchange of ideas. It's also rigidity of ideas, so that new ideas will stick. It's a fixed sign of age of Aquarius. There's a lot of arguments about when exactly the age of Aquarius begins and ends. So
does it mean like that? I know that the Greeks believed in a golden, silver, bronze, and iron age. Are we out of the Iron Age?
Does it feel like we are?
Deep into that.
Yeah.
I mean, he told us an Iron Age ending and a new astrological age.
The ages are such broad strokes. I like to look at the smaller scheme of things to get a better idea of how to deal with things practically, because it's so broad that it doesn't really give me an idea of how to, so I don't really speak on that. Can I go, tell me I have to stop, I'm sorry, I have one more question. I can talk to you at the end about it. Yes?
What Iceland did in 2008, is that a model for something that other countries, do you think, might be able to implement?
Yeah, he's asking about what Iceland did in 2008, if other countries might want to implement. They overthrew the government and took over. If they can, I think that they're trying to negotiate a system. I think they know that the people aren't going to put up with it because of the riots that have spread in every place that they've tried to install these controls and this austerity. So get involved, stay alert, stay awake, stay healthy, and come see me. I have business cards. What I really do is consultations with people, but here I speak about the world trends. But you can sign up for my email list as well. I'm going to start a new newsletter. Thank you.